Hi everyone, welcome to my booktube channel. My name is Mariana, but you can call me Mari. I've been watching booktube for years and years, and I've dreamt of being able to make a YouTube channel and share my thoughts with you, and hopefully those thoughts will be listened to and we can discuss about bookish things. And I'm finally kind of gathering the courage to put myself out there and share with you my thoughts about books that I really truly love and enjoy. So that's why I decided to make this video first, which are my favorite books of 2021. This year I read around 71 books, which is quite a lot, and I had my share of really terrible reading experiences, but also amazing reading experiences. So let's start with the best of the best. And before I do, I want to mention some of my honorable mentions of this year, because since I read so many books, it was really difficult to pick my favorite of them all. So I still wanted to mention some that I really liked but didn't quite make it into my favorite books of 2021. So my honorable mentions are The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, The Vanish in Half by Britt Bennett, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So those are my 5 honorable mentions that I still think you should go and read. I am thoroughly recommending them to you. So now that I got that out of the way, I still wanted to tell you about my favorite books of 2021. Starting out with number 10, which is Dreamwork by Mary Oliver. This book is rather a collection of poems that all connect with nature and our human experiences through the world, and it's seen through the eyes of a romantic poet. I very much think that Mary Oliver was inspired by the Romantics, and she writes in such a way that you can truly feel how the world around you connects itself to you and how it goes back within itself. And it's beautifully written. It makes you think. It's not the easiest writing, but it's also not so difficult that you wouldn't be able to understand it. And I think the best way to truly show its essence is by sharing a poem with you, which is my favorite one out of this collection, called Wild Geese, and it's also very well known. It's one of her most famous poems. It says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it does. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like a wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things." I'll leave it there. And now moving on to my number 9. Favorite book or novel of the year is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is a very intricate and thought out novel, very much inspired by Piranesi's work. If you don't know who he is, he was a very famous artist and architect who was very well known for making 3D, very complex architectural figures and houses that were known for its never-ending staircases and kind of circling around the dreamscapes that he would come up with. And this novel is very much that. It's an exploration of a house that is much more like a labyrinth, and it has different rooms that show themselves at certain points of the day and then disappear. The narrator of the story is a man who gets lost in this house and then starts to learn about the house and finds himself through the house. And it's not only an exploration of the object of the house itself, but also the nature of being of this man who is discovering himself as he goes through each room. And it's just a wonderful novel that made me feel like I was in a dream state constantly. I couldn't stop thinking about the house, and I couldn't stop thinking about the structures of the rooms that were described. Even though the ending wasn't my favorite, and I'm not going to spoil it, but even though the ending wasn't my favorite thing, I still really, really enjoyed the whole novel and the whole idea of the novel. I thought it was very imaginative and very creative. So I would recommend you check it out if it's something that sounds interesting to you, and if you like architecture and art and the infinite of the world. And then on number 8, we have In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a memoir about an abusive same-sex relationship using a classic narrative trope, or many different classic narrative tropes, to tell its story. It's also very imaginative and creative in the way that it tells the story. It's divided into different chapters where the narrator tells us about the different things that happened to her throughout her relationship with this other woman. It's a very difficult read, but it's also very rewarding in the end to be able to accompany her through her struggles and see her come out of the other side in a way that a lot of people have. And it's an experience that is shared by so many women and so many people that I think is a story worth telling. And thank you to Maria Machado for being brave enough to tell it. Please go read it. And then for number 7, I have The Push by Ashley Audrain. And this is a psychological drama about the difficulties of being a mother, about a woman who discovers that she is utterly terrified of her daughter and what her daughter is capable of. And it deals with whether women should be mothers or not, and whether being a bad person will mean that your sons or daughters would also be bad people, which is not necessarily the case. But the novel kind of makes you question those things and puts it in a way that is honestly quite scary. Me, myself, I don't really want to be a mother, so reading about being scared of little kids was very much in accord to my own thoughts and ideas. And I know that maybe people who are mothers won't really truly connect to it, but I think if you're one of those people who are not very sure about it, and maybe you are scared of kids, and honestly, if you hear the kids in the background, that's because I live in a place where a lot of kids play outside. And as I'm editing it, I'm noticing that the kids scream throughout the entire clip I'm talking about this novel. Coincidence? I don't think so. And yeah, that's The Push by Ashley Audrain. It kept me reading and it kept me interested, but it also kept me thinking about my own place in terms of societal roles and ideas. So anyways, moving on to number 6, we have 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is a novel about a heist that follows 6 different characters. We have Kaz, Inej, Nina, Matthias, Jasper, and Wyland. Wyland joins a little bit later. But this is a fantasy novel, but also combines it with a heist novel, where the characters have to come together and work together to achieve a certain goal or to be able to accomplish a mission. And so we follow these characters. It's told from a multi-perspective point of view. It's really fun. It's really engaging. It's a really fast-paced story. It is also very deep and psychological in the way that the characters are able to overcome some struggles and come together with each other. One of my favorite quotes from this novel is, "No mourners, no funerals. Among them, it passed for good luck." And it's very famous. And also another reason why I really enjoyed this book, specifically the second novel, is the show. The TV show is incredible. So I really, really enjoyed the TV show for the Grisha trilogy, but the 6 of Crows characters do show up in that TV show. So I think it's worth it if you're interested and if you like fantasy. I used to read a lot more fantasy before. I kind of stopped watching a lot of fantasy shows and reading a lot of fantasy novels because I kind of got tired of the same plot over and over again. And I've heard that the Grisha trilogy is kind of like that. But 6 of Crows is definitely not like that, in the way that it kind of changes a bit the romance tropes, and though it does follow a very tropey heist it's still really fun, and I would still recommend it. And then for number 5, and now we're getting into the top 5 favorite books of 2021. And these are honestly my favorite books out of enjoyment. Sorry, I had to close the door because there's a little kid that is screaming so loud, but that's the regular here. You didn't know this, but my camera overheated, so now I'm back. And I was telling you about my 5th favorite book of 2021. So let's go back and I will tell you about Black Dagger Brotherhood series, specifically the book Lover Awakened by H.R. Ward. This is kind of like I don't want to say guilty pleasure because I don't believe that there's such a thing as a guilty pleasure. I just want to say that these books are kind of like trash, but my favorite type of trash in the whole entire world. I absolutely enjoy these books to my very core, and I've read them so fast. I've been reading them for about a week and a half now, and I am in the 4th one, so clearly they do have some impact on me. And specifically the 3rd book is my favorite because it deals with a character that is the typical bad boy. Wait, no, I should tell you what these books are about, right? Okay, let's talk about let me tell you what these books are about if you haven't heard of this 19-book series. Yes, you heard me right. It's a 19-book series about a brotherhood of killer vampires. Yes, and each book follows a different couple within this world. And what I really enjoyed about this book is that the tropes that we usually read or hear or see about vampires are all about them being some blood-sucking monsters who go after humans, but maybe they fell in love with a human, so it's difficult for them to be with them because they want to eat them. So those are the type of vampire romances that I usually read when I was a teenager. So I hadn't really picked up any other vampire books until I decided to start this series for some reason, and I really enjoyed it because in this series the vampires don't actually feed on humans, they feed on each other, so they are a separate race from humans, and they have a very interesting lore surrounding how their society works, and they don't fight against humans, they fight against these mean bad guys called the Lessers, who are non-humans. So they are humans turned evil by this evil god. And that's another trope that I really enjoy, that the fact that the vampires are not inherently evil, they're actually part of like the good goddess, and then the bad god is the one that they're fighting against. So I don't know if that made any sense, but I really enjoyed. Again, it's purely out of enjoyment. And I am recommending this in case you want something really fun, really quick-paced, really immersive. The writing makes you feel like you're there because it's not only focused around one person, so it's not a first-person narrative, but rather a multi-layered, multi-perspective story. So it's really, really fun. Really fun to read each character's thoughts and perspectives and to follow different characters and not only the same couple, but it deals with much more. The book that I'm mentioning here has this character whose name is Zadist. I know, they all have ridiculous names. That's another thing. This guy's name is Zadist, and then we have Wrath, we have Rage, Fury, which I, for the longest time, had read as Furry. My Hispanic brain can't handle so many weird names. And then we also have Vicious, Revenge, just all these weird names. But this book is fun, it's difficult, it's an adult paranormal romance, so it obviously deals with sex, violence, a trigger warning for all of those who are sensitive to all types of violence. I will say that. I would recommend this book in case you want to read something about vampires. If you're the type of person who really enjoyed Twilight in the moment that it came out, and then you read a lot of vampire books, but then you were kind of bored by them or thrown off by, you know, the repeating tropes. I think this is a very creative way of approaching vampires that I really enjoyed. Obviously, this is not news. This book series has been around for like 20 years because, again, this is like almost a 20 book series. So take that as you will. If you want to strap on and read them with me, you are welcome to do it, and we will talk more about it as I keep reading the books. But right now I'm in the 4th book. My favorite has been the 3rd, and I have rambled about this long enough, so I'm going to move on to my 4th favorite book, which is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Another memoir in this list, and now I'm going to pull up my phone because I have the other part of the notes here. This is Chanel Miller's memoir. She is taking back her voice, telling her story about what happened the night that Brock Turner sexually assaulted her. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he was the Stanford swimmer who got off with a very light sentence for sexually assaulting Chanel Miller, who at the time was known as Emily Doe. So she is presenting her story and telling the consequences of what happened from her own perspective, because we hear it from the news and we hear it from the outside, but we never hear it from her, who was the victim in this situation. But rather than a victim, she was a survivor of the situation. And she was able to push forward and tell us about what happened, and tell us about what happened afterwards, which is even worse, because the justice system in the US is trash and it doesn't work and it doesn't help victims. And I know that there's things that have been happening in order to help and make it better, but it's still not good enough, and that's what Chanel Miller talks about here. And her memoir is so poignant and so important. It gets me going, because honestly it's a topic that is so important. You'll see a repeating pattern throughout this video. I really enjoy books that deal with political issues and feminist issues. Again, I thank Chanel Miller for writing this and for telling us her own story. And I think the best way to truly understand how powerful her writing is and how powerful her story is by sharing a quote with you. So my favorite quote from this memoir is, "I survived because I remained soft, because I listened, because I wrote, because I huddled close to my truth, protected it like a tiny flame in a terrible storm. Hold up your head when the tears come, when you are mocked, insulted, questioned, threatened, when they tell you you are nothing, when your body is reduced to openings. The journey will be longer than you imagined. Trauma will find you again and again. Do not become the ones who hurt you. Stay tender with your power. Never fight to injure, fight to uplift. Fight because you know that in this life you deserve safety, joy, and freedom. Fight because it is your life, not anyone else's. I did it. I am here. Looking back, all the ones who doubted or hurt or nearly conquered me faded away, and I am the only one standing. So now the time has come. I dust myself off and I go on." That's Chanel Miller. Know My Name. Incredible. Go read it. And now my 3 favorite books. We are in the top 3 favorite books of 2021. And this book, honestly, this book is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. And it is about a cranky, wonderful old man who loses his wife and loses his will to live because of that. Everything changes when a family moves in next door and challenges him to get out of his head and to get out of his house and to do things that he didn't want to do or he didn't think it was possible to do because of his sadness. This character reminded me so much of my grandfather, who passed away at the beginning of the year. And obviously I'm getting emotional just thinking and talking about it, because this book is very special to me and it made me cry. It made me bawl my eyes out. I think I had to sit down and process what I was reading, because it was very difficult but also very beautiful. It was almost like a healing process for me to read about this character and to feel like I knew him and to feel like I could connect with him in a way that I didn't know was possible for this type of book. When I read the synopsis, I didn't know it would hit me as hard as it did. So I want everyone to read every single book in this list. But if I were to choose a book that I would recommend to anyone who has been through the loss of someone they love, is this book. Because it's important. And I loved it. I really love Ove as a character, and I love his story, and I love the way he sees the world, and I love the relationship he builds with those around him, and the idea of found family, all the themes that this book tackles on that are so wonderful, truly astoundingly inspiring. And then going to a more of a nice and fluffy read, but also kind of like an important read as well, for me, is Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is a trilogy, a romance trilogy that I read this year. Each book follows a different Brown sister and their own love affairs and their own coupling. This book in particular follows Dani, who is a career-driven academic who studies a PhD in a university. The whole story starts when she gets caught in a fire drill inside the university, and this security guard, whose name is Zaf, who is huge and handsome, goes into the university and saves her, or kind of carries her outside. As he's doing that, the students are catching on to what's happening. They take pictures of them and they become famous or trending on Twitter, and the story kind of starts there as they decide to fake a relationship because it's beneficial to both of them in different ways. Dani as a character is the most relatable to me and to my own life. I feel like I've read many different books, and she is a character that I feel the most connected to because of the fact that she is so outright herself and independent and powerful, but she also has her very transparent flaws that she's not able to shake easily. I love her relationship, or the relationship she builds with Zaf. I love her family dynamics with her sisters. I love that she is a bookworm. I want to be her at the same time as I don't know if I want to be with her, you know, but she's awesome. And this is my favorite book of the trilogy, but I think each one of them is a great romance book. Out of all of the books that I've read in terms of romance, I think this is the one that takes a cake for the best romance book that I've ever read. So if you want a romance book that has depth to it and talks about important topics, so not only around the fluffy and the steamy, which it has a lot of, it also deals with anxiety, and it has representation. They are great, and I thoroughly recommend it. And I loved it a lot. Yeah, go read Take a Hint, Dani Brown, please. And now my number one book of the year, my favorite book of this year, and it will not come as no surprise for those who know me. It is Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. I absolutely loved this book and everything about it. I love the plot, I love the character, I love the message, I love the comedy aspects of it. And this book is about a mother who, and you'll see another repeating pattern, is a woman, a mother who realizes she does not necessarily want to fit into the motherhood role that has been assigned to her by society and by her partner and by everyone around her. So as she's beginning to have this midlife crisis that is not really a midlife crisis, just a full-on crisis about her situation, she starts turning into a dog. And so we see her as she starts turning into a dog. The story is very natural, and it's told in a way that you truly believe that it's happening. And I thought, okay, yeah, she's turning into a dog. That's fine. I loved the fact that she was so unapologetically angry at the world and at the fact that she was kind of forced to put away her dreams to become this version of herself that she didn't necessarily choose. And my favorite quote from this book that I think shows exactly what I mean by that, is how many generations of women had laid their greatness only to have time extinguish it completely? How many women had run out of time while their men didn't know what to do with theirs? And what a mean trick to call such things holy and selfless. How evil to praise women for giving up each and every dream. Honestly, how evil to praise women for giving up their dreams in order to become what we have forced them to be. So that's pretty much the whole idea of this novel, and that's why I really love it and I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's not for everybody. People maybe will find it too strange for them, which is totally fine. But for me, it was my favorite book. I want everybody to read it because I think, again, it's important, it's creative, it's very well written, and yeah, Nightbitch by Richard Yoder. That's my number one favorite book of the year. Thank you for joining me on this very long video, but I hope you took away something from it. I hope you are inspired to read these books. I hope you subscribe so we can become friends and we can get to know each other, and that you become part of this project that I've had for years, and that you can help me be able to express my thoughts. So yeah, thank you. And I hope you all had a really amazing reading year. I hope that this new year brings you all joy and happiness, and that you are able to find your favorite book of all time. Fill yourself with words and love. And I will see you soon for my worst books of 2021. So going from a more positive video as an opening for this booktube channel to a little bit of a rant, of a negative video. So I will see you then, and take care.